Hello, Travis. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And thank you for being a contributor as well.
Thank you for including me and for asking me. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. So let me ask, I have three quick questions, so I won't keep you long. But the first one is, other than the fact that I asked you, why did you agree to be a contributor to Bigger and tell your story?
sure. Well, for me, it came down to the fact that I really when you asked me up front, I think I said yes pretty quickly, but I wasn't really sure what it was that I wanted to say or what I felt that I could contribute. And when I really went back to it and started thinking about about my own life and how vulnerable I think I wanted to be, was really the question, right? And I realized that I didn't want to be superficial. So I really needed to go back to where were the deepest issues for me and what were the most profound lessons that I'd learned. And I felt like oftentimes, when we talk about forgiveness, we often talk about it from the perspective of, sort of like I'm entitled to be offended, and therefore when I forgive, I'm sort of like, I'm doing this for me, it heals me, and maybe I'm kind of offering a gift to the person who offended me. But I think that there's another layer when we add on to, um, the dynamic that we we've heard it said that hurt people. And oftentimes we are walking around when we're wounded people and we don't deal with our wounds. We're very often hurting people, and we may not even realize it. And for some of us, those wounds that we've caused, come back and they hurt us even more. And so I found myself in situations in that I talk about in the book that, really are, it's pretty drastic. And there I'm sitting there incarcerated, realizing that I have caused wounds and harm to other people. And that at the heart of it for me was this need um, to deal with some of the unforgiveness and the pains that I had gone through. And so in order to become a better person, I needed to first deal with the things that hurt me in my own childhood, and going back to that. So, that for me was just realizing I had an opportunity to use my story to help people in that way.
Yeah, that's true. That's so good. Yeah, that's funny because I say hurt people, and heal people. So that was
Mm,
kind of what this journey was for me too, is to try to give people tools to heal themselves so that they can then heal others.
yeah.
So, yeah, looking back on what you shared in your story, what advice would you give someone struggling with forgiveness?
Hmm. Um, I mean, first of all, it is a process, right? And there are certainly times where we forgive somebody, like in a moment, we may have sort of an epiphany or some sort of inspiration. And so we're like, oh, aha, I should go forgive this person. But then, that doesn't mean that all of those wounds just get settled up right away and everything's better. And so it's actually okay to go through an extended process of healing along with that. And one, don't give into the thing that pulls you back into walking in unforgiveness, but also to be okay with yourself when you're still struggling with those wounds. Like, forgive yourself. And be able to there's I remember I was sitting in a group meeting. It was the same group that I talk about in the book, and there was a guy in the group that said that oftentimes we hear, in life, that we need to go harder on ourselves. If I was just a little bit harder on myself, if I was more disciplined or sharper, or I, made myself get up and do what I needed to be. But he said, um, this old man, he said, I came to the realization that I needed to go softer on myself. And so I think that in the process of forgiving others, we also have to forgive ourselves. And we need to go softer on ourselves in that process, because otherwise, it becomes another sort of like legalistic perspective, this idea of like, oh, you better forgive people, you need to forgive people, because Jesus said in scripture, he said, forgive others, and if you don't forgive, basically, how is my father supposed to forgive you? Well, sometimes we take that on as sort of this added pressure of like, oh, I'm in judgment because I didn't forgive. But the reality is like all of those things have already been understood and covered and taken on by the Lord. And so there is a healing that's already there available for us. And so like it makes sense to me to just like go softer on myself. It doesn't mean we don't hold ourselves accountable. It doesn't mean that we don't call ourselves to something higher. But when we miss the mark, when we can't find ourselves getting there yet, it's okay to go softer on yourself and go, you know what, like let's find my way through this and not beat myself up for it.
Mm, I love that. Go softer on yourself. That's good.
Yeah.
So, other than forgiveness, is there anything else that you would love for the reader to get out of your story? And
Hmm.
other than go softer on yourself, because that was good.
Yeah, I mean, um I think that at the heart of it for me is this idea of reconciliation, that forgiveness um isn't just like it's not just sort of this mystical thing that's out there and like I forgive and everything's better, but that forgiveness is working our way towards reconciliation. And that's not always something that's capable in like a physical sense with everybody. Like, I know, taking, the situation that happened with your family, and I don't necessarily see that being a dynamic that's realistic, especially since there wasn't a relationship there to begin with, right? But the truth is that when we're wounded, our unforgiveness can actually separate us from people in general. Like there can be a this sort of breach that takes place in our ability to have relationship with mankind, to walk in unity and trust with each other because we've had something really painful happen to us. And so forgiveness is something that actually can draw us back to and help us reconcile in a more meaningful way and trusting way with mankind in general. And I think that that's important, to have that reconciliation with both God and with man. And hopefully, and where those relationships are meaningful, like for me it was with my father and with my family, and to know that like you know I really struggled with that relationship, but today we have a very healthy and strong relationship, that it's as if God had sort of come in and repaired all of that. But I do think, I think reconciliation to me, just with people and with God, is so important.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. So, I failed to mention that Travis is a musician, among other things. So, I don't know if you want people to know where they can find you, where they can find your music.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've got some stuff that's available obviously on streaming services, so you can just look up Travis J Gandy. And most of my music, I do have some. I'm working on a project actually with some guys that I was locked up with, that really I think is meaningful. We'd like to put together a live project that we can release as a recording, that's just gonna maybe share testimonies and stories about where we came from. And so yeah, I'm that's kind of what I'm moving for. So I think there's some good stuff to come.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, be sure and follow Travis J Gandy, Gandy.
Mm,
Thank you, Travis. Have a
my
good rest of
pleasure.
the day.
You too. Thank you.